Blog Talk Radio. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Medlock Post radio show. This is where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. The views and opinions on the Medlock Post radio show are those of the host and guests. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker.com, its corporations, affiliates, or any other podcast streaming services. Thank you for joining the show today, and here is your host, Richard G. Medlock.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is today. It is October 25th, I think. October 25th, 2022. Welcome to the Medlock Post, where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. Again, I want to thank everybody for your feedback and your suggestions and your emails. My email is medlockpost@gmail.com. And great suggestions, great things to talk about, and I would love to be able to get to everything you send me. It's just not possible. So I apologize for that. The episode today, and it's episode 70, Liberty versus Tyranny. That's right. That's where we are in America today. And that we're going to focus some of most of our discussions on that today. This morning, I was reading the comics, and I don't know if you read this or not. It's called Bird Brain. It's a great comic. It's kind of a little off-centered. And they had one this morning. The guy is out in the middle of the desert. He's standing over a hole with a dirt pile on each side. He's holding a rope going down the hole, and he says, "It's not my fault. The rope is too short. You dug the hole." Now, it could be real safe to say that this is part of a conversation the Democratic Marxists are having right now. And then we need to ask the question, and who is in the hole? Who is in the hole? Is it Biden? Is it Harris? Is it Pelosi? Is it Schumer? AOC? Who is in the hole, folks? Or can we say it's the whole Democrat Marxist Party? It's kind of interesting. So as we look at this and as we go forward, think of that. Think of that picture. Someone standing over the hole that's been dug. It's not my fault. The rope is too short. You dug the hole. Can the Democratic Marxists get out of the hole that they have dug? You answer that question. You need to analyze that in your mind with your knowledge and what's going on today and say, can the Democratic Marxists get out of the hole that they have dug for themselves? So, no, I'm not going to answer it today. All right. You probably know what I'm going to say, but I want to know what you're going to say. You need to answer that question yourselves. And if you say they're not in a hole, then maybe you're part of the problem. All right, what happened last Friday? Steve Bannon went to court and was sentenced to 4 months in jail, but he was only fined $6,500. Why the big discrepancy there? I mean, he could have gone to jail for 6 months and fined, I think it was like $200,000. So why the big discrepancy there? Well, he's going to appeal it. He was released pending his appeals, which I think all of that will get overturned, folks. Now, but what happened immediately after the sentencing hearing? Correct. Donald Trump was issued a subpoena by the January 6th committee to show up November 15th, the week after the election. They couldn't get him in before. And to bring the documents from January 6th. Well, I thought the Department of Justice got all his documents. And everything else had been turned over to the archives. So how can he bring something he doesn't have? I want you to listen to this soundbite. It's why they want you to hate Donald Trump. It's almost 7 minutes. I apologize for the length. No, I don't. But you need to hear this.
Everyone's in on the Great Reset. Well, almost everyone. There's one guy who's got the power to do something to stop it. You know exactly where I'm going. And they made a mistake. They tried to get Trump on their side, so they invited Donald Trump to Davos, I think a couple of times. But in January, when Donald Trump, I think, really began to see the beast that he was up against, he went to Davos, to the World Economic Forum, and he stuck a mega finger in their eye.
We're committed to conserving the majesty of God's creation and the natural beauty of our world. But to embrace the possibilities of tomorrow, we must reject the perennial prophets of doom and their predictions of the apocalypse. These alarmists always demand the same thing: absolute power to dominate, transform, and control every aspect of our lives. We will never let radical socialists destroy our economy, wreck our country.
2 days after Donald Trump gave that speech, the 89-year-old leftist weirdo billionaire George Soros made an emergency intervention where, at Davos, once again, warning that the U.S. 2020 election will determine the, quote, fate of the whole world. Now, in the context of Davos, take a look at this one more time. This is a month after Donald Trump addressed Davos and stuck the MAGA finger in their face. Here's what Francis, the Vatican, and Jeffrey Sachs had to say in response.
And it is a dangerous country right now. It will be absolutely dangerous if Trump wins re-election. Trump wins re-election. Trump wins re-election.
Francis invited this guy to the Amazon Synod as an honored guest and advisor. He's also Bernie Sanders' advisor. What's he doing in the Vatican? Why is this guy who's a promoter For a socialist, out and out socialist, Bernie Sanders, what's he doing advising the Pope? Why does he have entree to the Vatican, friends? Sachs supports abortion and contraception, but that's not a problem for the Vatican. For the Vatican, for Pope Francis, and for his friends at the UN, Donald Trump is the problem, obviously, friends.
Clearly, I consider the Trump administration a danger to the world, but I regard it as a purely temporary phenomenon that will disappear in 2020.
Do you get it? You see why there's so much hate for Trump? Because with all of his faults, again, he's the capitalist. He's not the globalist. He never will be one of them, which is why he pulled the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Donald Trump pulled the United States out of the World Health Organization. That's Bill Gates and company. And now he's threatening to pull the United States out of the World Trade Organization. People say, yeah, well, Donald Trump got married twice. He's a bad guy. Really? He's right in the face of the demons on this, friends. Nobody ever said he was a saint. He's knocking the sacred cows of the United Nations down all over the world right now.
The General Assembly routinely votes 185 against the United States on almost everything right now.
And remember, speaking of the United Nations, in November of 2019, again, right before COVID landed, Trump went to the UN, the floor of the General Assembly, and he declared war on globalism.
Wise leaders always put the good of their own people and their own country first. The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots.
Shortly after the speech at the UN, Donald Trump delivered, what do you think happened? The coronavirus was unleashed on the world, and Trump's booming U.S. economy went on life support. Do you think that was an accident? So when they tell all of us to stay home, wear your mask so grandma doesn't get sick, please understand what's really going on here. They don't care about your grandmother. They don't care about old people, these people. They don't care about babies. They want them aborted so that they can save the common home. Abort babies, millions of them all over the world. They don't care about babies. They don't care about old people. In fact, if you want to save your grandma, tell the globalists to stay the hell away from her. Remember how some of them, like Cuomo and characters like this, were running COVID recovering patients through nursing homes? That's how much they care about grandma. And the name of the game now is to bring the United States economy to its knees, get it out of the way, so that everyone will want the Great Reset. Make the new normal so intolerably abnormal that even you and I, maybe, at some point in the near future, will be begging for the vaccines because we'll be driven crazy by that point. Begging for whatever else is going to keep us safe according to our jailers and our handlers and our zookeepers. You see? That's what they want. That's why they keep using this term, new normal. You know what we do to fight back? Go to work. Go back to school. If you're healthy, take off the mask. And for heaven's sake, go back to church and pray that Trump wins in November. That's what the reset was on. That's what the Russia hoax was all about. That's what the impeachment hoax was all about. Don't you see? For 4 years, I've been trying to stop this man because if he strengthens America, if he makes it great again, if he brings the economy back again, the reset won't happen. The New World Order is going to be set way back. Who knows when they're going to have another COVID opportunity like this one again, and they know it. So ask yourselves why they hate this man. These folks, these men, they hate God. They hate the unborn. They hate the traditional family. They hate you. And they hate Donald Trump, whose political opponents, by the way, right now are knocking statues of saints to the ground. They're beating up cops, and they're burning flags. You say you don't like Trump. I'm sorry, friends, but who cares? That doesn't really matter anymore. But you think of Trump's personality or his tweets. Look at the big picture. The choice is simple, friends. Stand with America right now, or fall with the New World Order in the not-so-distant future. There's no other choice. I'm Michael Matt for Remnant TV, and we'll see you next week.
I wanted you to listen to that, to put it so succinctly. That was from August of 2020, right before the election, to understand what they were trying to do to Donald Trump and what they are still trying to do to him today. They want him dead and gone, out of the way. They want his followers gone. They want us to kneel and bow before the globalist. Well, folks, it ain't going to happen. The only person that we bow to is God. No man on earth we will bow to. No government will we bow to. Only our God. You need to understand that. You need to put that into perspective and in the forefront. Liberty versus tyranny. It is your choice. I'll go back to the question I asked when I was talking about Renew American Purpose. Are there people in America that do not want freedom? That do not want that responsibility? That do not want to make decisions for themselves? Yes, there are. They want the tyrannist to just make their decisions, take care of them. And we've seen since the 1940s what has happened to those people. They live in poverty. Now, moving on. The U.S. Department of Labor, again, which does not have authority to do this, none of these federal agencies have any authority to do what they're doing right now, especially the CDC has no authority to start making mandates of what vaccines your child gets and put on the school list. They've added the COVID vaccine to all the others. Now, folks, that's tyranny. That's Marxism. But the U.S. Department of Labor has now come out and trying again. The Democratic Marxists have tried this over and over again. How many of you out there are contract employees? So you have a contract to work with a corporation, Uber, Lyft, some UPS drivers, FedEx drivers, truck drivers, and all types of employees out there are contract. And they file a different tax return, etc. And they don't get any benefits from the corporation. They just get paid. Well, the Democrats have been going after them for year after year after year after year, wanting to take those rights away and force the employer to put them on the payroll. Why? Because they want all those payroll taxes paid into the government. They want that money going into Social Security. They want the employment taxes going to the government. So they've tried this again. The Labor Department came out the other day to wipe away the structure that Donald Trump worked up his last year in office to establish these workers as contract workers. Well, the Labor Department now has come out with, we're doing away with that. We want these guys to all come in. Well, it is, they're painting the picture. How great is a worker's opportunity for profit or loss based on his own initiative or investment? One tenet of independent contracting is that there should be entrepreneurial opportunity built into the arrangement. Well, that's a good thing, right? But organized labor has long held that this sort of employee classification test is too narrow and that a broader multifactional test should be used to ensure higher standards for as many people as possible. Notice I said organized labor. Who runs organized labor? That's right, Marxist. The next sentence, union activists say a better test would give roughly equal weight to at least 7 factors, including how important the worker is for the employer's business and how long the worker is employed. But you see their way of thinking here? And of course, the Biden administration agrees with the organized union. All right, anyway. So they're trying to take away workers' rights. The federal government has not made adjudicating this debate simple. In 1947, Congress explicitly carved out independent contractors from the National Labor Relations Act definition of employee. Now, you get that? Congress explicitly carved out. Not the Labor Department, not the FDA, not the FHA, not the IRS, Congress. In 1968, the Supreme Court ruled in its United Insurance decision that the obvious purpose of Congress excluding independent contractors from the law was to have the NLRB and courts apply the common law agency test when distinguishing an employee from an independent contractor. Since then, the board and courts have used a 10-factor test to settle the question. And over the last 15 years, they want to throw out that 10-factor test. And they want you all working, they want you all an employee of that business. So the government can benefit and the government can have more control over you. Liberty versus tyranny. The Biden administration, they don't care about Supreme Court rulings, lower court rulings, nothing. They're going to ignore them. They were told, the FDA was told they didn't have rights. It has to specifically come from Congress, a bill that they passed, specifically outlining what you can do. Well, Congress hasn't done that in a long, long time. They just put in this wording in there, the secretary of or the director of has a discretion to make changes, regulations, laws, etc. Well, Supreme Court said, that doesn't hold water, folks. Got to be specific from Congress. And Congress did this so they can sit there and say, oh, we didn't do that. No, but your appointees did. Thereby, the administrative state. Barry Goldwater said, throughout history, government has proved to be the chief instrument for thwarting man's liberty. Government represents power in the hands of some men to control and regulate the lives of other men. And power, as Lord Acton said, corrupts men. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, unquote. We have been witnessing this corruption for 50 years or more. When Bill Clinton became president of the United States, this corruption escalated. Calm down here, take a breath. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Today is October 25th. 2 weeks from today, you'll be voting. Matter of fact, in our state, early voting started yesterday, Monday through Saturday for the next 2 weeks. Matter of fact, I was talking to my wife this morning. We might go down Saturday morning and vote, get it done. Now, in our state, you have to show an ID. You have to register to vote. You have to prove you're a citizen. Now, the Obama administration fought this state on that. But the Supreme Court ruled, no, they have the right to do that. The states, under 10th Amendment, has the right to control elections in their states. They make the laws, not the federal government. Now, I have to read this. Mark Levin, who's a constitutional attorney and has a radio show, has a program on Sunday night on Fox, Life, Liberty, and Levin, which is a great show. His opening monologues, a lot of times, are just fantastic. In the last few weeks, I've got one from October 3rd that I'm going to do in the next couple of days. But this was from Sunday night, the 23rd. And I have to read it because I do not have a license agreement with Fox to play a soundbite. I don't have that. And as time goes along, hopefully we can get that worked out. But those things cost a lot of money. So, and also, before I get into that, I'm trying an experiment today. I'm trying to record this program, video it, as I'm doing it on radio. And I'm going to see how it works out. I might have to go in and edit it a little bit, crop it, because when I play a soundbite on Blog Talk Radio, it's probably not picking up on the video. So we'll see how that works, and that way I can post that on my YouTube channel instead of just the audio, and then I might start putting it up on Rumble and a couple of other places. So I'm experimenting with that today. So if you hear some hesitancies, because I'm having to move things around, I'm going to send this video out to some friends and see what they think, even though it's going to be rough. Checking the lighting and all that stuff. All right, Mark Levin, October 23rd. If you want to destroy America, how would you do it? It sounds provocative. It's not intended to be if you want to destroy America. How would you do it? Well, let me suggest to you, America is being destroyed. If you want to destroy America, then you vote Democrat, because the Democrat Party has been unmasked. Its policies and programs are delusional and destructive, and they are dismantling the most fabulous nation on earth right before your eyes. Capitalism stands in the way of a planned socialist economy, which they support, so they seek to deconstruct capitalism. In order to fundamentally transform America, you must seize power by perverting and sabotaging our Constitution, legal and voting systems. That's what they are doing. The American people have not knowingly or voluntarily surrendered their liberty, property, society, and Constitution to the reprobates and malcontents within the Democrat Party, and who are among us. And they are among us. It is a slow process, and it's packaged in deceit and propaganda and lies. You are said to be the beneficiary of these designs when, in fact, you are the targets. Now, ladies and gentlemen, think about that for a minute. They are telling us that whatever they do will benefit us, that they will take care of us. Don't worry about anything. It's beneficial to you that we target you, that what we're doing will benefit you. But in fact, you and I are the targets. That's right. And how many of you have come to that conclusion? A whole bunch of you. 71% believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. Well, if you said that 71%, and these are supposedly registered voters, you need to go to the poll and vote Republican. Yeah, I know you might not like some of the Republicans. I don't either. But bite the bullet and vote Republican. So if 71% of Americans did that, the Democratic Marxists would get flushed. Back to Levine. The Democrat Party doesn't seek to improve society. It seeks to destroy it and replace it. The Democrat Party sees your economic struggles and even impoverishment resulting from their policies and programs as a necessary condition to imposing a teleological and imagined paradise on an unwilling and unsuspecting people. It is therefore necessary to use taxes, regulations, executive orders, a massive bureaucracy, and issuing hundreds and hundreds of dictates to reorder society, the economy, and the government. This goes back to the soundbite I just played. The Great Reset, the globalist Great Reset, is to do away with the Western society as we know it. And they've accomplished that in many Western countries, but America is in their way. Donald Trump knew that. You and I know that. Do the Democrat Marxists know that we know? Yes, they do. And that's why they keep pushing and pushing and pushing to destroy you and I and everything we have. And inflation, the high prices, is making it tough on a lot of people. Let's make it so hard on the American citizens, they will come crawling to us. That's what they want. Liberty versus tyranny. What do you want, ladies and gentlemen? Now, back to Mark Levin. It is necessary to silence, humiliate, and shame contrary voices as conformity is essential. Conformity is essential. Folks, that's a mandate. You either do it our way or guess what? We're going to take you down. Back to Levin. And therefore, you need truth squads, and therefore you need the government working with Silicon Valley oligarchs and alike. It is necessary to squash knowledge and actual science, impose doctrines, and change the language to control, direct, and manipulate the people. It is necessary to use the police powers of the federal government against your opponents, real and perceived. Parents, pro-lifers, peaceful protesters, the political opposition, a former president of the United States. That's who is their enemies. you and I. It is necessary that the media be compliant with your means and your ends, helping to brainwash the public, reward compliance with fawning coverage, and smear and libel those who dissent or resist. And of course, it is necessary to dismantle the nuclear family by using government schools controlled by the Democrat Marxist Party through their union bosses to promote racism, sexuality, perversion, and to prevent parents from participating in raising their children. Now, understand how some of this is worded. Mark Levin is talking directly to the Marxists here. Directly. Now, are there some things in what he's saying that goes back to what I was talking about in my last few programs, especially the one on the goals of communism, Marxism? I went through several of those. Taking your children away from you, controlling the schools, making perversion look normal. Control what they teach in the schools. Get control of a political party. Get control of the media. He just summarized that in his last paragraph. Liberty versus tyranny. What do you want, folks? Now, I'm not through with Mark Levin. He went on pretty strong the other night. You can go on foxnews.com and watch it if you want to. Continuing, it is necessary to dumb down the children to ensure that they are not smart and that their test scores are low. So ever more malleable and compliant future generation. Let me stop there. We just got Monday, national test scores in our schools have dropped. Duh. They shut them out, locked them down, and it's interesting, only in blue states. Who controlled the decision to shut the schools down and keep them closed? Two organizations, key organizations, the CDC and the teachers' unions. The National Education Association, which is basically a government agency, although it's classified as a labor union, that's a government agency, folks, that money is funneled through. And then your local teachers' union, state and local, teachers, we won't go back to work if you open the schools. Too dangerous. You know what? You're fired. Let's go hire some teachers that'll teach. I would have gone and taught. Been happy to. Liberty versus tyranny. Back to Mark Levin. It is necessary to dismantle American history, which is exactly what's being done. You lie about the founding. You shred the Declaration and the Constitution. You eviscerate the founders. You rewrite history by substituting 1776 with 1619. You replace real history books with racist propaganda, and especially in school libraries with sexually explicit pornography. You pull down the monuments. You expunge history. You destroy the homes and the legacies of Jefferson, the author of the Declaration, and Madison, the main figure behind the Constitution. It is necessary to hollow out the military with wokeism and vaccine mandates, to crush local law enforcement and centralize police powers at the FBI, the American Stasi, and the Department of Justice. It is necessary to unleash anarchy and lawlessness in our cities and neighborhoods to cause people to be upset with the existing society and the status quo and to want revolutionary change. Now, those last few sentences, unleash anarchy and lawlessness, he was showing pictures of Antifa and BLM burning cities. And nothing happened then, and nothing has happened now. But you go out and demonstrate in front of an abortion clinic, and you will get arrested and prosecuted by the Department of Justice. Totally against the Constitution, a violation of so many rights and protections. It is necessary to destroy national sovereignty with open borders, create chaos on our southern border, sex trade violence, fentanyl, drug cartels, chaos and anarchy. There's that word again, chaos. I've got something, is it on today's show? Might not be, that talks about this from the globalist. I've seen so much stuff over the last 24 hours, I can't even keep it straight. That's why I have a script. Back to Mark Levin. This is how you destroy a country from within. This is the issue before us on this election. In 2 weeks, folks, from today, back to Levin, every single problem we face that's of a significant magnitude to our very existence as a free and prosperous people, as a sovereign nation created by one party and only one party, the Democrat Party. Now, it's a Democratic Marxist Party. And of course, the Democrat Marxist Party has its supporters, mainly the media, the New York Times. We've talked about the history of the New York Times. The New York Times supports this sort of thing. After all, the New York Times is behind the 1619 Project. The New York Times lied to the American people repeatedly on behalf of Joseph Stalin because with their correspondent in Moscow. The New York Times covered up the Holocaust and lied about the Third Reich because they were asked to by Franklin Roosevelt, and because the owners of the newspaper were concerned that people would be critical of the New York Times. And so it has a chief correspondent in Berlin, a man who sympathized with the Nazis. The New York Times brought us Castro, who had been defeated. It was in the jungles of Cuba with about 20 so-called guerrillas. The New York Times breathed life into his revolution, and the people of Cuba have suffered ever since. Now, let me address that. And I talked about this in an episode long back. Cuba, Castro, was defeated. But the New York Times went out there supporting him and made him look like a saint to take over Cuba, which was really doing pretty good, had a good economy, good trade, good relationship with the United States. Yeah, the president was a little heavy-handed now and then. They made Castro look like a George Washington. And the American people bought it, and especially the American government. Thereby, they supported him in gaining control of Cuba. And it's been hell ever since for the people of Cuba. And even today, the New York Times has been caught time and time again with hiring anti-Semites who despise the state of Israel and Jews generally. But more, let's look at the Democrat Party's history again. The Democratic Party was the party of a confederacy. The Democratic Party was the party of the Confederacy. The president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, was a Democrat. Most of the generals were Democrats. The KKK spawned out of the Confederacy. Now, I'm going to step here. I'm a Southerner. The KKK developed after the Civil War. There was no Confederacy at the time. So I'm going to correct Mark Levin. Party opposed reconciliation, and they used the KKK to support that position. It took a Republican President Grant to send the U.S. Army down to wipe them out, the KKK. And then when the Democrats won the House, Grant didn't have the authority to use the Army again. The Democrats took it away from him. And then the Klan prospered in segregation. Plessy versus Ferguson. The latter part of the 19th century, a Supreme Court gone rogue again. Again, the Democrat Party pushing segregation for another 100 years after the Civil War. The Democrat Party pushing segregation and racism, folks. And then the Supreme Court stepped in again with Brown versus Board of Education. Separate but equal is not equal. Another decision that was intended to do what? Democrats from being racist and discriminatory against blacks. It didn't work. In 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Civil Rights Act, they were passed to do what? To stop again a large number of Democrats from stopping blacks from voting or stopping the implementation of the Civil War amendments. Then we have Woodrow Wilson, one of the earliest and leading so-called progressives, a.k.a. American Marxists. He was a flat-out racist. Now, again, I'm reading from Mark Levin, but I agree with this, and this is why I'm reading it. What did he do? He resegregated the civil service. What else did he do? Everything possible to put down blacks and prevent them from achieving. He embraced eugenics, as did his party, as did Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, another appendage of the Democrat. They not only wanted to wipe out what they call idiots and morons and so forth, but they were targeting black people. Let's jump to Franklin Roosevelt. Right? The right guy. Right? Not so great. The propaganda from the Democrat media has protected this man, has immunized this man from many of his imperfections, which are significant. Number one, on more than one occasion, there were efforts in Congress to pass a federal anti-lynching act because blacks were still being lynched in the South, mostly by Democrats. FDR wouldn't support it. So it never passed under FDR. It even came up again in 1940, and FDR wanted a winning, unprecedented third term, so he squashed it. His first appointment to the U.S. Supreme Court, Hugo Black, had been a lawyer for a client, the Ku Klux Klan in Alabama. What else? The New Deal. Look at all these great programs that were passed. You know, many of these programs were passed to try and address what the Democrats have done to minorities in this country previously. But when you look at the Federal Housing Authority, the FHA, which was one of the first New Deal programs passed, as I mentioned last time, that's where we get redlining from. Why? Because they were directed not to give home loans to blacks, to neighborhoods in which blacks predominated or the neighborhoods around them. And what the FHA would do is they would color these neighborhoods in red. Folks, they would do it on a map. I've seen those maps. And that's where you get the phrase redlining. What about Lyndon Johnson? What about his mark? we have to admit that he was a strong proponent of the 1964 and 1965 Civil Rights Acts. Folks, I remember all this. But even his greatest biographers, even including Robert Carroll and others, have said while he led on civil rights, he remained a die-hard racist. He did remain a racist. This was for political gain, passing those bills. Remember, those bills were voted 100% Republican. Not one Democrat in Congress at that time voted for those 64 and 65 Civil Rights Act. Not one. It was all Republican. Lyndon Johnson was basically forced into a corner to sign those bills, as Bill Clinton was forced into corner to become a moderate instead of a left-wing activist. Do you see the pictures? Levin here is going back in history like I do to help you understand how we got here. Lyndon Johnson was in Congress for a long time, voted against civil rights, except until 1957 when he thought someday he'd like to run for president. And, of course, he was John Kennedy's vice president. And then, of course, Kennedy was assassinated. And there are still people out there today that still believe that Lyndon Johnson is the one that had him killed. Now, folks, don't go running. That's a theory. It's been proposed for many, many years. Never proven, but that is a theory still out there today. Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone, as the Warren Report concluded. But anyway, that's another tale here. Now, let's get back to Mark Levin. Now, why am I telling you all this? The country is in decline, not because the American people want it with massive inflation, with the dollar being destroyed, with the borders wide open, with massive crime taking place in our streets, disrespect for police, the undermining of the United States military, inflation, economic conditions through the roof. These are all decisions that have been imposed by the Democratic Party. Foreign powers, not Russia, not Ukraine, not Saudi Arabia, but Joe Biden and the Democrats. If you want to save the country, if you want to begin the process, we hope, of reversing course, if you want to improve your lives, if you want to protect your family, whatever you do, don't vote Democrat, unquote. Now, I don't know how much plainer Mark Levin and I can get about this. This is where we are in America. America, the Democrat Marxists want to destroy America. Bottom line, that's what we have here. Bottom line, they want to destroy you and I and what we have. Wow. Okay. Mark Levin, folks, if he's on Fox News Sunday night at, is it 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock? I don't remember. But he's on, it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Life, Liberty, and Levin. So, folks, liberty versus tyranny. If you want tyranny in America, vote Democrat. If you want liberty, if you want the Constitution to survive, if you want your freedoms to survive, vote Republican. Now, a lot of us, again, are still asking, how did we get here? I haven't checked the video. I can't check it till after the show, but I guess it's still recording. It's in the background somewhere. Let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, it's still recording, folks. I think. Yeah, it says in the corner, recording. So this is good. This is one of those experimental days. I ran a 3-minute experiment yesterday, and the sound worked. Because some programs, you pull up 2 programs, and the audio will only go to 1 program. This one is going to both. I hope it's doing that today. Yeah, I did it on a private thing on Blog Talk Radio, and then I deleted it. So no, you can't go back and watch it. All right, episode 70 on October 25th. 2 weeks before the election. Folks, we will have on Wednesday after the election one heck of a program. We're going to have some guests on here, and we're going to hash over the election from the night before and what it means to America and how you and I can be part of that process. And if you think the Republicans are going to slam dunk the election and get control of both houses, you need to go vote for that to happen. Don't just say, you don't need my vote. Yeah, we do. Every vote counts. Go back to 1958. The John Birch Society. Now, a lot of people have different opinions about the John Birch Society. They were, back in the 50s and 60s, they tried to get labeled as a communist organization. They were libertarians. They still are libertarians. I follow what they do. I don't agree with everything they do. I don't agree with everything Congress does or the Republicans do. Especially lately, they can't get anything right. Remember, I played Marjorie Taylor Greene's soundbite the other day. She's still at it, folks. She hasn't slowed down one bit. So let's take a look at what the John Birch Society said in 1958 about America. Now, the John Birch founder predicted 10 steps to America's destruction 55 years ago at a John Birch Council dinner. This was in 1958, the founding meeting in 1958. Now, there's a video of this on YouTube. You can look it up. Robert Welch, the founder, just look it up. John Birch Society, 10 Steps to America's Destruction. And it'll come up. It's a grainy black and white. According to Wikipedia's entry on Welch, his term insiders refer to a cartel of globalist organizations, including Bilderberg, the Council of Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission, as well as international financial and big business families such as the Rothschilds and Rockefellers. In other words, it's what is commonly referred to today as the New World Order, a powerful ultra-elite perched on the tippy top of the pyramid and working furiously behind the scenes to bring about a totalitarian one-world government. Now, he's not calling the John Birch Society an insider. He's saying that when Robert Welch refers to the term insiders, he's referring to the globalist organizations. Let me read that again. He referred to a cartel of globalist organizations, including the Bilderberg Group. And that reminds me, I need to do, on one of my programs, talk about them. Scare you. The Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, which is a globalist group. It creates the foreign relation in our country. The president doesn't do it. the Trilateral Commission, international financial and big business families, Rothschilds and Rockefellers, that's what's tied into the central banks, including the Federal Reserve. Let me read a quote from while we're sitting right there. A quote from Barry Goldwater. Most Americans have no real understanding of the operations of the international moneylenders. The accounts of the Federal Reserve have never been audited. It operates outside the control of Congress and manipulates the credit of the United States, unquote. And what he said in the 1960s is still true today. They've never been audited. They're an independent branch. They're not a federal agency, despite their name. They're not a federal agency. Now, I did an episode, The Central Banks and Freedom, episode 24, 25, 26, somewhere in that area. You ought to go back and listen to that. All right, so this is Robert Welch at the founding meeting of the John Birch Society in 1958. Starts out, quote, a part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty piece by piece and step by step to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example, unquote. Now, take what he just said and go back the communist goals. Gradual surrender of American sovereignty. That's in the goals. Piece by piece and step by step. That's part of the goals of the communists. Various international organizations. Yeah, of which the leading one is the United Nations. Now, this is 1958. He had seen the communist goals. All right. So here are the 10 steps that Welch outlined that if the American government did, it would bring about America's destruction. Number 1, greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of every large sums of American money as wastefully as possible. Well, has that been done? Greatly expanded spending? Ruining the dollar? Ruining our economy? Piven Project? Mass welfare? Taking over the government, taking over the health system of America? And trying to take over other systems? Number 2, higher and then much higher taxes. Now, we can look at this and you say, well, 1958, the top rate was 90% income tax. But you had 8 million deductions, folks. Nobody ever paid the 90%. Yeah, we've got the tax rate down. However, folks, taxes and fees on other things. Every time you turn around, you're paying a tax. You buy gas, you're paying tax. You go to the grocery store, you're paying tax. You're taxed on your house and your automobile. Everywhere you turn around, you're paying a tax. And a lot of these were not in place in 1958. You want to start a company, you got to go down and pay a bunch of fees to get licenses and then continue to pay them every year to maintain your license. Folks, that's a tax. I'm just looking at the time here. This show's flying along. Number 3, an increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. Wow. Did he hit the nail on the head in 1958? Because he understood capitalism, he understood the free market, he understood Adam Smith and the Wealth of Nations, he understood the Founding Fathers and what they meant, and he understood the Constitution. Mr. Robert Welch. Now, today, an unbalanced budget? We don't have a budget, and we have a continuing resolution. That's not a budget, folks. You know what that continuing resolution says? Well, now you can spend 5% more than you spent last time. We have a $31 trillion plus deficit, debt. That doesn't include the deficit that we run every year. Then that gets added to the debt. Now, the Biden administration was out running around yesterday. Oh, we've cut the deficit down, way down, lowest it's been in 40 years or whatever they said. Whoop-de-doo. You're still running at a deficit. The Biden administration in 18, 19 months has ran up the deficit or the debt $8 trillion in 18 months. $1 trillion. And now they're bragging because they cut the deficit a little bit? I don't think so, folks. Number 4, wild inflation of our currency. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1958, the government was figuring out that inflation was that's right. I was talking to my wife the other day, and we were talking about the housing, how housing prices have just skyrocketed. Now, they're starting to come down in some markets. I mean, home sales are down the lowest in like 25 years. Mortgage refinance is their lowest in 20 years. Rates are over 7% now. Last December of 2021, you know what the mortgage rate was? 2.5%. Now it's over 7%. What kind of increase is that? It's not a 25% increase. It's almost a threefold increase. 2.5 times 3 is 7.5. And adds hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to a monthly payment that you weren't expecting a few months ago. Home sales are dropping. The housing market's in a recession. And when those numbers start going down, the economy goes down. The economic numbers doesn't look good. Again, don't get fooled by all these earnings in the stock market right now. You have a dollar that is way overpriced. And that's going to catch up. Number 5, government controls of prices, wages, and materials supposedly to combat inflation. Folks, price controls don't work, but they're still pushing them on us. Look what they're trying to do with the oil and gas industry. Wages. In 1958, there was no minimum wage. There wasn't. My first job, well, I should say a job working at a business on a regular basis, I got $1 $15 an hour. Yes. And they took taxes out and they paid us. This is when they paid by cash. We got a little envelope at the end of the week. Here you go. Controlling materials. This supply chain disruption we had during the pandemic, do you think that was cause of the pandemic? No. All these food shortages, formula shortages. We were the only country in the world with formula shortages. Control, folks. Number 6, greatly increased socialistic controls over every operation of our economy and every activity of our daily lives. This is to be accompanied naturally and automatically by a corresponding huge increase in the size of our bureaucracy and in both the cost and reach of our domestic government. Did he just define in 1958 what is happening today from our federal government and a lot of state governments? He hit the nail on the head, didn't he? Accompanied naturally and automatically by increase and of size of bureaucracy and more government agencies and more of a reach in cost to the American people. Boom, he hit it. Number 7, far more centralization of power in Washington and the practical elimination of our state lines. There is a many-faceted drive at work to have our state lines eventually mean no more within the nation than our country lines do now within the states. Now, the state lines are still there for a reason, because the states have fought to keep them there. Now, Washington tried to use the Commerce Clause in the Constitution to take away those state lines and to control everything that went on in the state. But the states have fought back. So what did Washington say? Okay, we're going to change courses here, and they figured this out in the 1970s. We're going to put the states on federal government welfare. You've heard me talk about this in the past. They started by giving money to the schools and to the roads. In the 1960s, well, in the 50s, President Eisenhower came up with the interstate roads. We need to connect the country with freeways. So they started building that. Well, then the federal government gave money to the states to help maintain them and so forth. Then they got into the schools. Then they got into all the other aspects of state-controlled things. Oh, you need more federal money to do this. Congressmen from that state went and got money for that state to build bridges, to build dams, and all this stuff. The federal government got their hooks into the states. And that's what we have today. They're trying to take away states' rights and do away with the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. A lot of the things what they're doing from Washington, D.C., they have no right to do under the Constitution. The states now are pushing back. This new voter bill that Biden and the Democrat Marxists are trying to put through will make all elections controlled by the federal government, not the states. Well, folks, you need an amendment to the Constitution to take away that power, not a bill in Congress. So they've got their hooks in. Go back to Roe versus Wade. That was a state decision in Texas. And the Supreme Court took that right away from them under the Commerce Clause. And thankfully, the Supreme Court ruled in June, nope, that was a bad decision. We're overturning it. It goes back to the states. Let the states decide. But the federal government, the Marxists, are still trying to codify it into federal law, that everybody can have an abortion up until birth. And they're campaigning on that. And they're falling flat on their face with it. Number 8 from Robert Welch of the John Birch Society from 1958. The steady advance of federal aid to and control over our education system, leading to complete federalization of our public education. Folks, I just explained that. Number 9, the constant hammering into the American consciousness of the horror of modern warfare, the beauties and the absolute necessities of peace, peace always, on communist terms, of course. Yeah, you thought that was sounding good until you understand the appeasement aspect of the Democrats and the Marxists. This was part of the communist goals. Get America, do away with your nukes, okay? Invite China into the UN, which they eventually did. Give them a seat at the table at the UN, so Russia and China both can outvote the United States on issues. That happened. But, oh, you want peace? Then just accept our terms and you can have it. Well, we never really surrendered to them, but this is what we're doing here, folks. Look at what Biden did in the Middle East. Withdrew from Afghanistan. China and Russia and Iraq have total control, almost total control of the Middle East now. And we're destroying our relationship with Saudi Arabia. Have you seen that in the news the last couple of days? That's being done on purpose, folks. Number 10, the constant willingness of the American people to allow the steps of appeasement by our government that amount to a piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world and of the United States itself. Appeasement. Doesn't work, folks. Go back in history and look, especially World War II. Poland signed a peace agreement with Hitler. That afternoon, the Nazis invaded Poland because they let their guard down. Now, looking at the stage of post-9/11 America today, the perpetual war on terror, empire building in the name of humanitarian regime change, of democratically elected leaders in foreign countries, the Department of Homeland Security and its Transportation Security Administration Goon Squad, the National Defense Authorization Act, and its ability to disappear American citizens suspected of terrorism without due process of law, Obamacare, the National Security Administration's Big Brother surveillance state, the militarization of our police in an ever-expanding police state, the Common Core, the Federal Reserve's runaway monopoly money printer, and a nation hanging on the verge of economic collapse, the crackdown on food freedom. How accurate do you think Welch was in his predictions? Well, you know what? Richard G. Medlock, the host of the Medlock Post radio show, says he was dead on. And folks, he wasn't the only one talking about these things in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Ezra Taft Benson, the former Secretary of Agriculture under Eisenhower, talked about them. He actually met with Khrushchev. And there's a recording out there, I've got it somewhere, where he says, I looked into that man's and I saw nothing but dark and evil. And I've read you Khrushchev's quotes where he says, we will bury the United States of America without firing a shot. And folks, they're doing it through the Democratic Marxist Party, through the media, through control of the schools, through control of the education. Go on college campuses. There is no free speech on a college campus, on most of them. They're controlled by the Marxists. This is where we are in America. We vote in 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today, November 8th. If you want the status quo to stay and for you to become a slave to a tyrant, vote Democrat. If you want liberty and freedom and the Constitution to control America and the be able to law and order prevail, you vote Republican. It's that simple, folks. I've got an article. I'll probably talk about it tomorrow. Matter of fact, I didn't get to this stuff today. I still have other things, and it'll wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to be joined by Tom Herron with Up with America. He'll be on here. He's been running like a chicken with his head cut off. So he'll be here tomorrow. And you think the day was hot and heavy. Wait till he gets on here tomorrow. We're going to be throwing things back and forth to help you understand what is happening to America and what has happened to America. So, folks, I think we're probably done for today, except, no, I want to play. Let me go on this, folks. Let me play. We've got time enough barely to play this.
Dear President Obama, we, the people, have stated resolutely we reject your vision for our country. You claim you have not heard us. We, the people, have assembled across America resisting your efforts to subvert our Constitution and undermine our liberty. You claim you have not seen us. Since you have not acknowledged our message, let us here present it once more. For if, as President Wilson said, a leader's ear must ring with the voices of the people, the time has come. Our greatest treasure is freedom, the absence of restraints on our ability to think and to act. The corollary of freedom is individual responsibility. We believe in the power of the individual. A few years ago, President Bush said, history moves toward freedom because the desire for freedom is written in every human heart. Let us add that we will preserve it only as long as devotion to freedom is expressed in the heart of our actions. When President Lincoln dedicated Gettysburg National Cemetery, he declared, "It is for us, the living, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus so nobly advanced." That unfinished cause for which our soldiers willingly go to battle and for which so many have given their lives is a free United States of America. It has been nearly 150 years, and the work President Lincoln spoke of is not finished. In fact, that work will never be finished. Freedom is the capacity for self-determination. It is not an entity, but a condition, and conditions change. Freedom can expand, yet so can it contract. You promised change when you took office, Mr. President, but subjugation is not change we wanted or will accept. You have expanded government, violated our Constitution, confounded laws, seized private industry, destroyed jobs, perverted our economy, curtailed free speech, corrupted our currency, weakened our national security, and endangered our sovereignty. By compromising our nation's cultural, legal, and economic institutions, you are ensuring that our children will never achieve the same quality of life as we enjoy today. Through generational theft, you are robbing the unborn of opportunity. This is not acceptable, not in America. We did not become a strong nation through hope, but rather through self-reliance. No one better understands the relationship between individual achievement, dignity, and strength than our armed forces. Through every war, our soldiers have held this nation's destiny in their hands. They have not failed us. They cherish freedom enough that they are willing to die for it. Our duty to them and to ourselves is to treasure freedom enough to live up to it. We accept the challenge, Mr. President. That is why we are assembling across the land to deliver our message to you as often and in every way we can. Dismiss us at your political peril. Our great nation is a republic. We will not accept tyranny under any guise. Your policy to redistribute the fruits of our labor is sadism and will not be tolerated. By our honor, Mr. President, we vow forever to resist coercive government in America. Patriots will not stand silent as you attempt to dismantle the greatest nation on earth. We, the people, will defend our liberty. We will protect our beloved country, and America's exceptionalism will prevail. God bless the United States of America. Sincerely, we, the people.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Medlock Post radio show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Be back tomorrow. Tom Herron will be with us. May God bless America.